Thank you for the kind words, Paula, and thank you for your leadership of CFNA. Those of you who have staffed boards in your context know how wonderful it is to have board chairs leading in effective ways. And Paula, you're one of those people, so thank you very much for that. Good afternoon, Bishop and annual conference. There's no doubt we're navigating many things that will transform our church. And I was listening to Reba, not but, and amidst all of that, we will have the resources that we need to be committed, connected, and in community, as this year's theme indicates. Will we have to do some things differently? Absolutely. Will we have difficult decisions to make? You bet. Does that mean that we must abandon our core commitments? Absolutely not. Thanks to good stewardship, in this slide that's coming up next, thanks to good stewardship over the years, we have the resources to live into our new future in planful ways. Our solid balance sheet is the financial foundation to be able to do that. Disaffiliations will lessen our long-term financial capacity, and we will meet our continuing mission and program objectives without, in the aggregate, increasing the apportionment burden on continuing United Methodist churches. I want to repeat that. We will meet our continuing mission and program objectives without increasing, in the aggregate, the apportionment burden on our continuing United Methodist churches. I had heard some of you were wondering if that was the case, so I wanted to address that head on. And the districts, in addition to that, our starting place, the districts in the conference together, at the end of 2022, had about $30 million of undesignated or board-designated funding that will allow us to live into that future in a planful way. On this last point, it was referenced in Paula's notes, we did convene a balance sheet transformation working group in 2022 to raise our shared understanding of a pretty complicated balance sheet that includes 12 corporations and 130 different funds. There are opportunities to simplify those funds and to use them more effectively for the things that we are committed to. Over the years, I have fielded many calls, perhaps from some of you in this room, who have said, my local church has all these funds. I'm not sure how we got them or what we should do with them. How do we get them organized in a way that helps us do what we're needing to do? And in this case, the annual conference and our districts are not that different. You can see on this next slide that net assets, and this is a fairly complex slide, but I want you to note the white line from lower left to upper right. It shows that we went from negative net worth, if you will, or net assets to $85 million in net assets at the end of last year. Most of that growth has to do with how we've managed our clergy benefit complex, whether it be the liability associated with retiree health care and or investing the assets that we've had available from generations of commitment to our clergy. So it's going in the right direction, and again, an indication of the right place to start with. As you can see, however, in the next slide, our apportionments are trending down. From 2017 through 2025, on the other side of disaffiliations, we are preparing for a 45% reduction in apportionment receipts. 25 to 30% rather, that will come as a result of disaffiliating churches. These kinds of reductions are not met by doing more with less, by being more efficient. We're going to have to ask ourselves, what are our core priorities and what are the most important things that we must do to live into our future commitments? I do want you to note on this slide, the second and third rightmost bars, or bars from the right, have a blip in them. Disaffiliating churches have a responsibility to pay 100% of their current year apportionments and an extra year. That blip that's out of sync with that long-term trend from 2017 reflects what we anticipate that to be. The 2022 number is actual. The 2023 is an estimate. So we will utilize some of those resources in our future planning. Coming up in our next vote, and some of you may be wondering what the impact will be, we have 172 churches that you'll take action on. This action, in combination with what took place in November and what we anticipate taking place in October, results in short-term and long-term impacts. If all goes as expected in the next few minutes, in the short term, meaning by the end of this year, by the end of June 30, we will have collected about $17 million from churches that have disaffiliated, about $9 million of which is allocable to the Board of Pension for unpaid pension liability. And you'll also note that we have recovered some loans that were made over the years, some grants that have been repaid, and so on. These are one-time opportunities. They are not things that we can count on, of course, into the future. In the longer term, the result will be diminished resources from apportionments, which is where the difficult funding decisions will need to be made. I will add, we've been living in that world for 10 years. We have found ways to support mission through means other than apportionments, whether it's, in my time alone, nearly $2 million of Lilly Endowment grants, fee-for-service, coordination with other annual conference, Light the Way, and other such things. So apportionments are important, but not the only way we fund our future. And as been mentioned twice, and thank you to Brian Gath and the Rules Committee, it's very helpful that you suspended the rules so that we can actually do the work that needs to be done in a thoughtful way over the course of the summer and bring to you a responsible budget for 2024. I'll note that even though we don't have a budget before us today, on page 24 of your book of reports, right after my written report, is the financials for the conference and the districts that would have been part of the budget. So what you see there is what we would normally get, with the exception of one column that would be the 2024 budget. I won't recite the things that you've already heard, other than to note redistricting, disaffiliations, strategic plan, ministry with youth and young adults, and what does that look like, and how do we make that real and impactful. I want you to note that when it's all said and done, the discipline does specify what is the role of the annual conference. And you will see this on the next slide, and I want to recite it for you. It says, the purpose of the annual conference, the slide after this one, the purpose of the annual conference, this is paragraph 601, the first paragraph, the 600 section, is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world by equipping its local churches for ministry and providing a connection for ministry beyond the local church, all to the glory of God. It may be easy to realize that our goal is to equip the local churches for your ministry, and that's certainly worth highlighting. At the same time, as long as we're a connectional church, we have to find a means by which we can connect local churches to our ministry beyond the local context. And that might mean through our mission stations around the world, like North Katanga in the Democratic Republic of Congo, or our volunteers and mission teams that travel the country, or emergency response. But there are ways in which we could equip our churches beyond your immediate local mission. I want to thank you for the opportunity to serve as your CFO and Director of Administration. This forum doesn't lend itself well to questions. My contact information is in the book of reports. I'll make myself available if you've got questions during break and in the next day or so. I want to make sure that if you do have questions, they are answered. Thank you very much.